So I briefly wanted to talk about this article that came out on Collider today on December 26th, stating the return of Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans to the MCU is a betrayal of everything Endgame accomplished. And I kind of want to talk about it and see if I agree or disagree and hear what you guys have to say if you agree or disagree with this, because this could be very interesting. Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, the two pillars of the original Avengers, are set to make their day return to the MCU, and it's going to be a tremendous mistake. As the sprawling cinematic universe moves forward into uncharted territory, the instinct to rely on familiar faces for stability makes sense, but it lacks the spirit that the characters or the franchise as a whole always represented. Among the expansive roster of performers in the MCU, Downey, Evans stood out as the two figureheads of the cinematic franchise. Both actors had the most prominent roles in the entire cinematic universe as Iron Man and Captain America. So they go on to say Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. represented the underdog spirit of the MCU. The importance of Downey and Evans in the MCU, supported by how the actors' own professional journeys ideologically represented what the studio was trying to accomplish. They talk about how the MCU was basically a crazy experiment, having a large connected universe, and it definitely was, first kind of its kind, of different movies and solo movies and movies coming together like this. While it's important to separate the art from the artist, it's hard to fully untangle RDJ from Stark when the narrative parallels are so apparent, which I could definitely see because the fact that Robert Downey Jr. did have kind of a tough life in and out of prison and so on. But then they go on with Chris Evans. While Chris Evans had an altogether distinct path to becoming Captain America, he too seemed to represent a similar story to his fictional role. Evans wasn't new to Hollywood, nor was he new to playing a superhero, but the actor had yet to truly establish himself as a leading man. This is interesting that they say that. I guess you could kind of say that, yeah, he maybe didn't establish himself as the leading man, but it's weird to say that Captain America represents Chris Evans' journey. I guess you could make the argument because he was just this little scrawny guy, and then this background guy, pretty much nobody gave any mind to him, and then to the fact that eventually one day he becomes Captain America, which is very noble, I guess. But it's interesting that they say these things. Avengers Endgame concluded their narrative journeys. A common criticism of comic book storytelling is the lack of sufficient stakes between fake deaths, resurrections, and the narrative hijinks. Characters in comic books often get stuck in revolving journeys with little actual progress. The issue is that what Avengers Endgame successfully overcame. Endgame was a love letter to the original Avengers cast. It was a farewell tour that gave their characters conclusive narrative endings that thematically aligned with their arcs that spanned several films. In this chapter, the MCU gave these comic characters bittersweet but earned endings to their stories. And then they go on to finally say, the new Avengers roster deserves the spotlight. It's no secret that the MCU has been going through a rough patch in the last few years, as reception to Phase 4 paled in comparison to the near universal positive hype surrounding the franchise during the previous two Avengers films. The return of Downey and Evans feels like a response to this waning interest. It also feels like waving the white flag. Now, I get this argument here. They also go on to talk about Shang-Chi and Anthony Mackie as Captain America, and just, a few characters that kind of haven't really got the spotlight as their new roles, as everything. But it's interesting to talk about. Now, I don't believe, Robert Downey Jr. is coming back to play Iron Man. He's coming back to play Doctor Doom, which is a different character just played by the same actor. And I do understand where Collider is coming from with the fact that he is the same guy coming back to play a role in the MCU, and they're relying on a familiar face, which I can totally agree with. But at the same time, I will argue the fact that it's a new role and a much different role because Robert Downey Jr. is this hero and Doctor Doom is not. And then Chris Evans coming back, and the rumor from Jeff Snyder is that he's coming back to play a character like Nomad, not Captain America, not like the Human Torch, which he has actually come back to play Human Torch in Deadpool and Wolverine, which is another different character by far than Captain America. So again, I do see where they're coming from, that they're relying on familiar faces, but they're familiar faces are playing these new roles that I think fans are really interested in. Chris Evans is not coming back to take the Captain America spotlight from Anthony Mackie, which I do think eventually, with all that being said, Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans will make some type of return. I think we're going to see evil Avengers. I think we're going to see kind of the original six be the bad guys taking on these new Avengers. And then my kind of ideal journey is these new kind of alternate characters, not these characters brought back, like the same, I guess you should say, 616 Robert Downey Jr. and Iron Man, and 616 Chris Evans Captain America, but another universe is Captain America that's also Chris Evans, and another universe is Iron Man that's also Robert Downey Jr. And then we'll go on to another Black Widow, and maybe even taking the same roles from Hawkeye and the Hulk. And it's just interesting. I do understand where people are coming from with this argument. I do understand where Collider's coming from with the argument, but I just don't think it has that much merit. At the same time, you could argue too that they're paying almost homage to comic books not having a definitive ending and bringing these characters back. But I don't think it takes away from other characters as much as it is, because at least in these up to the lead up, we're going to be seeing these characters like Anthony Mackie in specific, that he'll be Captain America in this movie as well. So it could be two Captain Americas. He's not going to be Falcon anymore. But again, it does seem like in a way they are waving the white flag when it comes to this. And I mean, take it how you want to take it. But yeah, I guess it does. It's like our big actors are gone. We're failing at the moment. Let's bring them back for new roles and kind of generate that hype again, get that success again, get that money again. And yeah, I mean, I think you could see that obviously, but I almost feel like they've always had this plan for a while now. I mean, Secret Wars was announced a few years ago, and then I feel like, with the Russo brothers talking about Secret Wars, even during the Endgame press tour, that they wanted to come back and they had an idea for the story. Doomsday could be a new one with the whole, Kang Dynasty situation with Jonathan Majors. But again, I don't want to, absolutely shit on this article, because there's a lot of things that I do agree with, like the white flag and everything. But I think it's more of like the fans wanting to see maybe these characters return one last time and give an interesting story, because there is a lot to tell with the fact, like, for example, Spider-Man, Tom Holland seeing his hero, the guy who looks exactly like Robert Downey Jr., because he is Robert Downey Jr., who was Iron Man, playing Dr. Doom, the main villain for, at least you should say, Doomsday, and then maybe Captain Anthony Mackie's Captain America, seeing Chris Evans be kind of this other character similar to Captain America, or even a dark Captain America, Hydra Captain America, or even just having a mentor again with these two characters. I'm judging based off of the Doomsday right now, and again, I want to see these characters back, so I'm going to be a little biased, of course, but let me know what you think of this. Let me know if you're excited for them, and let me know if you don't want to see them come back. Let me know all that down below, and thanks for watching today's video.